My name is Leslie Bergstrom, and I'm the superintendent of the Oregon School District. And this is the one board meeting that I have the opportunity to call to order. Today is Monday, April 24th, 2023, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. here in the Innovation Center at Oregon High School. Katie, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak? Here. Mr. Bush?
Here.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
Here.
Mr. Pankratz?
Present.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Flanagan?
Present.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is proof of notice for tonight's meeting, which Katie has, if anyone wishes to inspect it. Thank you, Katie. The next is the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda, minus the board member's oath of office, as that has already been taken care of. So we need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Then Katie, will you please read the roll?
Dr. Lakuda?
Here.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes.
Motion passes. We have an agenda. This takes us to item A, which is reorganization, and we already discussed the fact that the board members have taken their oath of office. We want to welcome Kayla Bush to our board, and we're very grateful. In addition to Anna Bijak coming back with us, and Heather Garrison coming back for another term. That's really terrific. We're grateful that you're here. And now we're going to move on to A2, which is election of officers. The board uses Robert's Rules of Order to establish its four officers: president, vice president, treasurer, and clerk. The duties are outlined by statute and in Board Policy 173. Any election of an officer may be by secret ballot should the board pass a motion to that effect, and that's Wisconsin State Statute 1988. Where the number of votes cast constitute a quorum, a majority of those votes is sufficient to elect an officer. Nominations may be made by any member and do not need a second. So, to start, I will take nominations for the Oregon School Board President. Are there any nominations for the Oregon School Board President?
I would like to nominate Krista Flanagan for the school board president.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Nominations are now closed.
I would move that we close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Krista Flanagan for president.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to cast a unanimous ballot. Is there any discussion? Katie, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
I'll abstain.
The motion carries. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So, Ms. Flanagan, do you accept the position?
I do.
Well, then I will hand the meeting over to our new president, Ms. Flanagan.
Gotta move up, sorry. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your vote of confidence. All right, now we'll move on to Vice President of the Board. So I will entertain nominations for Oregon School Board Vice President.
I'll take that, and I want to do the exact same thing that Troy did because I don't have the handy-dandy unanimous closing thing. So first I want to nominate Troy for VP, and then I want to do the unanimous vote thing. Can I do that?
Are we allowed to do that via parliamentary procedure?
To nominate first.
Yeah.
Yeah, first I'm nominating Troy for VP.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, we have a motion to nominate Troy. Is there a second?
Yes.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
And now I want to make the motion to close it and do a unanimous vote.
All right, we have a motion and a second to nominate Troy for the position of Oregon School Board Vice President and to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Do we need a second for that one, Gina?
She already got one.
But she closed nominations.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close nominations, nominate Troy for vice president, and move forward with a roll call vote.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Troy, do you accept the position of vice president? All right, thank you. All right, moving on to the next position, which is Oregon School District or Oregon School Board Treasurer. I will entertain nominations for that position.
I would like to nominate Mary Lakuda for the treasurer.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a nomination and a second for Mary Lakuda for treasurer. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, nominations are now closed. Katie, could you please call the roll? Oh, wait, we got to, sorry.
We need a motion and then a second and then roll call.
Okay,
So I'd like to make a motion to close the nominations.
Sorry.
And to have a vote for Troy, or Mary as treasurer.
we are not used to this. Good thing we only do this once a year. We've got everything else done. This is too confusing. Okay, we have a motion and a second to nominate Mary for treasurer and to close nominations and cast the ballot unanimously. Okay, any further discussion on that? Hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
You don't have to, certainly can. You can always abstain if you'd like, but you don't need to unless we do. Okay.
Yes. Ms. Wright? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. We are showing,
Caleb released.
he's impressed.
Learning from the best here.
All right, we're just going to do this each individually this time, okay? All right, I will entertain, oh, wait, Mary, do you accept the position of treasurer? I do. All right, great, you are the treasurer. Thank you. All right, I will entertain nominations for Oregon School Board Clerk.
I'd like to nominate Anna Bijak.
All right, is there a second? All right, are there any other nominations for clerk? All right, nominations are now closed. We have a motion and a second for Anna as clerk. Does anyone want to further that motion and cast unanimous ballot?
I will further that no, however you're saying it, yes.
All right, is there a second? I will second. Any further discussion on that? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll to nominate and by unanimous ballot Anna for clerk?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Anna, do you accept the position of clerk once again?
I do.
Thank you for continuing that position. All right, that concludes the board's election of officers. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now we will move on to consent calendar. In our consent calendar, we have the normal items here in terms of, you do have some staff resignations in front of you in terms of staff assignments, and then we do have the following donations, which I will read. All of these donations that I will read are for the donation to Artist in Residence program on African American music and culture at FES. 9701 from Jamie Johnson, 9701 from Heather Hoffman, 9701 from Wade Furkey, 4850 from Carolyn Schmidt, 4850 from Heather Bailey, 4850 from Maureen Coyle, 2425 from Chessie Henningfield, 4850 from Maggie Bach, 1940 from Christine Pagel, 2425 from Kathleen Bach, 2910 from Amanda Bartlett, 9701 from Matthew Radke, 9701 from Brianna Haug, 2425 from Jessica O'Malley, 4850 from Sherry Solomon, 4850 from Douglas Youngers, $760 from Badger Sporting Goods, $250 from Shannon Drake Burr, $1,500 from the Wyman family, $20 from Hillary Carr, and $1,500 from the FES PTO. We also have a donation from Hy-Vee, which is an estimated value of $305 for the FES dinner and a book, snacks, and water bottle donation for 500 guests. We have a $200 donation that's anonymous for the Friends of FES. And then we have a donation from Unity Point Health for an arm bike with an estimated value of $250 for the OSD Special Education Department. We have a donation from Stella's Bakery of 150 cookies, estimated value of $150 for the FES dinner and a book night. and $300 from the Oregon PTO for the PVE, Prairie View Elementary Kindergarten Field Trip. And then the following for A-Team scholarships: $50 from Jessica Ertl, $100 from Jim Pliner, $100 from Amy Miller, $100 from Shannon Anderson, $100 from Andy Weiland, $100 from Candace Widensee, $100 from Leslie Bergstrom, $100 from Darcy Jarsted Krieger, and $100 from Katie Anderson. And that concludes all of our donations for tonight. For those, thank you to everyone for their very generous gifts to the Oregon School District and our students. Okay, could I have a motion on the floor to approve our consent calendar? Is there a second? All right, all those in favor, oh, sorry, Katie, can you please call the roll, because we do have resignations on there.
Ms. Garrison? Yes. Dr. Lakuta? Yes. Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
I think I should abstain from the minutes because I was not part of the last meeting, but I can vote yes on everything else. Thanks.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
I have a question on, do I need to, like, the $760, do I need to make a point of notice on that since it was read out? It was updated, so we're good? Okay, so then yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to C, information items, public comment. Do we have anyone registered for public comment? Is there anyone here for public comment? Anyone here for public comment? Okay, moving on to OEA report. Is anyone here from the OEA? All right, seeing none, moving on to student report. Nate is here. Nate, the floor is yours.
Ready. Hello, everybody. So the first thing in the student report is the week before last, we had our Fine Arts Week at OHS. So all week we have different events hosted and run by teachers and students who take time out of their day to put together different performances that are usually in the PAC for classes to come and step out of and spend 45 minutes enjoying different aspects of fine art. We had dance performances, and everyone's favorite was the staff performance, I think, to round out the week. And then coming up soon in May are the AP tests. So AP classes have shifted away from new curriculum and towards review for those super important tests. Prom is coming up on May 13th, so people are scrambling to get reservations if they don't have them already. Spring sports are in full swing, with track having a meet last Friday. It was their kind of special all-relay meet. And student council executive positions have been mostly decided, with Charlotte Hendrickson and I serving as presidents next year, Ellie Huss as secretary, Ella Piotr as treasurer, Natalie Ronick as social media manager, Lucy Carlson and Mira Coleman as junior class reps, and the sophomore representatives are to be decided soon.
Great, thank you very much, Nate. Appreciate it. Busy time. Before we move on to action items, I did overlook one thing, and that is a staff retirement, and that's Colleen Schell. She has been a counselor at RCI for 37 years, and so I really wanted to recognize her. She's also been instrumental in developing the mentor program. That's the Be a Champion mentor program. Colleen has been invaluable to a lot of students and a lot of staff and a lot of family members in our district, so I think she deserves to be recognized, and I apologize for overlooking that, but thank you, Colleen, for everything you've done for our district. So thank you. Okay. Moving on to D, action items. Number one is the official designation, and these are all annual as part of this reorganization meeting. So the first is newspaper. So you'll see resolution number 2023-04, which is be it resolved that the Board of Education for the Oregon School District designates the Oregon Observer to be the official district newspaper. This is to certify that the foregoing resolution was adopted by the Oregon School Board at a meeting held on the 24th of April, which is by statute. We do have to do these designations the last meeting in April. So I will entertain a motion so we can pass that resolution.
I'll move to have the Oregon Observer as our official district.
Great, thank you. So that was a motion by Leslie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, sorry. Wow, it's like we've never done this before. Motion carries. I'm sorry, I was looking ahead to the resolution. So next on the agenda is resolution regarding investment of district funds. And I'm going to turn that over to Andy so he can walk us through that.
Yeah, so this is just a simple listing of places where we make deposits for our funds. Some of them are more of a regional basis. U.S. Bank is actually an administrative agent for the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative, which Oregon School District was actually a charter member of creating. It's basically a organization of 660301, so it's a cooperative of school districts and now municipalities and technical colleges that basically pool together to invest their funds together and get the best rates possible. Following state law, they actually have counsel and a bunch of different resources to make sure that that happens, as well as the Wisconsin State Investment Pool, which is run by the treasurer of the state of Wisconsin, and then just some local banks that are in the community, as well as a couple that are around the community type of thing. So this is simply that. There's actually the next one, I believe, is the investment policy, which more restricts what we can do in. But typically with these banks, what we're doing is we're just depositing funds, and then we would sweep them usually into the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative or the State Wisconsin Investment Pool, both of which have what do I want to say? Basically safeguarded the funds by different types of arrangements so that no one bank can fail and we can lose any principal, essentially. Is there any questions?
Do we have any clarifying questions? Okay, go ahead, Heather.
I'm going to channel some Tim LeBrun here.
Okay.
Could you, Andy, can you just tell me why there are so many banks and what the reason behind that is?
Yeah, so typically we wanted to make sure that we enlisted anybody local so that we can shop certificates of deposit, CDs. So PMA actually does that for us. They include the local banks as well as a network of banks outside of Oregon that they shop them for within their network. So it's just basically making sure that we have lots of different options if we're looking for the best interest rate possible.
Okay, so the first motion before us is the investment policy, then we'll move on to the individual depositories. So I will entertain a motion.
I'm sorry, and I jumped right to the resolution, the depository, so I
Okay,
apologize.
well, let's take that first then. Okay,
So
let's just stay on that because that was the question.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to switch the agenda to that. So I will entertain a motion about the resolution regarding depository of district funds, and you'll see the list of banks there. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? All right, any further questions of Andy? Go ahead, Heather.
Sorry, now that we're on the straight and narrow here. I understand your answer on why there are a number of them, and I accept that. Is there a reason that some banks aren't included, or how often do we refresh this list to see competitive analysis and interest rates?
So we shop every individual time that we're placing money. So the PMA does that for us.
But within this subset only?
No,
No.
actually, even outside the
Got
subset
it.
within the PMA financial network. So
Thanks.
Outside of this, but we listed these folks because they're local and we wanted to make sure that we included them.
Nope, I get it. That's helpful to know that PMA does that for us,
Yeah.
not just with those listed. Thank you.
All right, any other further discussion? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Okay, resolution regarding investment of district funds.
Yeah, so this is the one that provides basically the ability for myself and Cara Newton, who's our finance director, to basically shop the rates with PMA's help. We provide this document to PMA. Actually, PMA helped write it with advice from legal counsel to make sure that we are investing only in those things that are authorized by the state. And when we did this a number of years ago, we actually became more conservative than the state in making sure that we secure principal in all situations. So you can see the list of things. They list, for instance, the state of Wisconsin Treasurer Local Government Investment Pool and the Wisconsin Investment Series Cooperative, which I just talked about. Typically, the other things we like to do in this situation is make sure that when we do place CDs, we typically will place them, and if you look at the finance report, you might see this, if we're insured up to $250,000 with FDIC insurance. So what you see when we place a CD is whatever the interest rate is, we typically reduce the amount of principal that we put there. So even the interest that has accrued to the time that a bank would perhaps fail, we're always insured through FDIC. So we've been super conservative with our investments to make sure that we would never lose principal, and we do everything we can to make sure that that does not occur.
Yeah, that's a little bit top of mind lately, so that's good to know. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve that policy resolution.
I'll move to approve that resolution.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions for Andy? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright? Yes. Dr. Lakuda? Yes. Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Okay, moving on to 2, appointment of representatives. So this is the part of the meeting where we talk about different responsibilities of board members. So first one up is CISA 2 delegate. And Troy, was that you, or that was Tim, I think this, okay, that was Tim this last year. So is anyone interested, and this is where we don't have to have nominations, but people can volunteer. So this is, again, being part of a group that really talks about school district policy and school district governance in terms of our region and CISA 2. So is anyone interested? I think I did it 2 years ago. It's 1 or 2 meetings a year. So it's just good to know and talk with people from other districts. And we do have a representative of this area that gathers those meetings. So does anyone have interest in doing that? Okay. Anna, it is yours. All right. Thank you. And then you will get notification. Katie will have to notify them that you are our delegate, and then they will communicate with you directly. Okay, next on the agenda is the WASB delegate. And so that is the person that brings the resolutions that comes to WASB, brings them to that meeting. We talk about them, and then they serve as our delegate at the annual convention in January. I did talk with Leslie. She did have that role this year, and they didn't really get to fulfill the end of that meeting in terms of approving all those resolutions. So I think she may be interested in serving that role to its fruition this year.
Yes, I can do that again if that's good.
All right, great. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, next on the agenda is board committees. And so that is something that is the role of the president that I will be talking with each of you in terms of what committees you'd like to sit on, either vision steering or policy, and who will chair those committees. So we'll make those announcements at the next board meeting. And then finally is DOSD Wellness Committee. And Mary, you sat on that, so we'll let you talk about that and if you want to continue on that committee.
Yeah, I'd be happy to participate in that committee.
Okay, great. And Gina, we don't need to approve those appointments, do we? Okay, that's what I thought.
Hey, Krista.
Yes.
Mary, do you get those invites for the committees? Because I must still be on that list, which is totally fine when the meeting invites come, but I just want to make sure.
I do.
You do. Okay, then
Yes.
it's fine. If
Okay.
somebody wants to remove me, great, but as long as everybody's getting what they need, fine.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, next on the agenda for action items is a true action item, which is Girls Hockey Cooperative Grant. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom to introduce our athletic director.
Thank you. Brittany Spencer Grant is going to walk us through the hockey cooperative action item and explain to everybody a little bit about what this means, what this is, and we have been doing it for several years.
All right. Good evening. Thanks for having me back. You may recall, I want to say it was back at a board meeting in January. You saw our girls hockey co-op agreement for the next 2 years come before you. And the reason we had to do it again this year is there was a change in the schools involved in the co-op. So what's before you tonight is the actual contract that's going to go along with this team for the next 2 years. So it does list the 7 schools who are going to be active participants in the team. And then the big part that we all kind of care about is on the end there, the estimated budget. It's actually a little bit less than the one we had signed from last year, which surprised me. But that's all detailed in there. The reason we co-op in girls hockey is this past year we had 5 students here from Oregon who participated on the team. So without the co-op, we wouldn't have an opportunity for our girls to play in WIA girls hockey. So there are currently 7 schools, as I mentioned. We had Parkview at one point. They no longer have any students in the pipeline, so they're wanting to kind of get out of the co-op. Barneveld has a student, so they're wanting to get in. So that's why the schools are kind of in flux a little bit. But the agreement itself is before you with the 7 who believe will have active participants. On our side, we lose 1 this year, a graduating senior, and I think we should pick up 3 to 4 8th graders from Oregon to be a part of that team next year. So that's pretty exciting for us.
All right, great. Any questions of Brittany? We'll start on this side, since this side seems to have
Quit
questions.
fighting.
Go ahead, Heather.
It's like Family Feud. I have a couple of questions, and I apologize if I missed it in the resolution, but a couple of things. One, glad to see that our numbers are growing. That's exciting. And 2, super glad to hear that this is a thing so that we can continue to have our students participate. What happens if, for some reason, in the 2-year agreement, we have no students? Are we on the hook for the 2 years, no matter what?
So good question. You actually, if you don't have any active participants, you just owe Stoughton $50 to be a part of the part of the kind of agreement.
I did see that. I wasn't putting that together. Thank you. And then also, is it a prorated amount where you pay per student, or okay? And I missed that too.
So they take the total estimate and they divide it by the number of girls that'll be on the team. So we won't know the exact per person amount until next year. Well, I guess that's not true. I think they tell us the exact amount.
But then it changes by each year within
But then
the 2 years.
their estimates, I think, kind of fluctuate. So we get billed, so it's $15.75 per skater is what they're estimating for next year. Of that, we pay Stoughton the full amount based on how many kids we have. And then we invoice the families a portion of that for the ice fees that we charge. That's the same on the boys and girls side for our hockey players.
Okay, and then my last question, and then Troy maybe still will have some, is do you have a sense of that? You mentioned 1 or 2 other school districts. Off the top of your head, are we, just out of curiosity, is 5 one of the higher numbers or lower?
It's on the higher end.
Higher, that's so exciting.
Yep, so Stoughton as the host school last year, I think there was only 1 or 2 girls from their school. I think Monona Grove also was right around 4 or 5. So altogether, there were only 16 girls on the team last year. So for us to have almost a third of them was pretty exciting.
Good to have the Badgers winning national championships over and over.
In our backyard.
All right.
Okay, go ahead, Troy. And then Mary.
I think you answered it already, but I was wondering about the cost, the per player cost that the student would pay, $890 for the girls here. And from memory, it seems like our boys pay about the same amount.
So we actually charge $850 is kind of what we've done as a district. I know there is a desire from our hockey families for that number to be reduced. So the $890 that they put in here, I think that was kind of their suggestion. Each school district does handle it a little bit differently. So I'm actually kind of curious how many schools actually follow the $890 versus how many, have their number on the boys' side and then they just mirror it.
Gotcha. So we charge the same for girls and boys.
Correct.
But the district makes up the difference in $40 per
Correct.
player. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mary, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm not a mathematician, but some of the numbers aren't adding up for me.
I agree with you.
Okay. Can you help me understand why?
I actually printed out the last contract from last year too and was comparing, and I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
This is what we received from Stoughton.
Because 7 times 50 is 350.
Is not 400.
Right, and then 11 games at 255 is 2805, and then 12 trips at 300 is 3600. So I was just curious to know why.
I wondered that as well and pointed it out to my assistant today, but the other part that we kind of questioned a little bit was the ice rental fee that's listed on this year is actually the rate that was listed for practice ice from our previous one, and then there was a separate line item for game ice that's not included in this one. But their athletic director is on maternity leave. So I didn't want to bug her.
So I guess my question is this have to be approved tonight, given that the costs are not accurate?
No, I think we just get it back to them as soon as we can, is my belief.
So I would suggest as a board that we not approve a contract that doesn't have the right fees in it. Are we in agreement with that?
Well,
Point of order.
Go, okay,
You should have a motion to that effect.
Okay.
Vote.
okay. So I will entertain if the board would like to do that.
I'll make the motion to hold on approving this so that we can circle back with the correct numbers.
Go ahead, Gina.
Would you like to make a motion to table that until the
That,
next meeting?
is that what you want me to say? I'd like to make a motion to
That,
table it.
that's a correct Robert Rules of Order, so let's
Well,
table.
since we're doing it so well tonight, I'll go with, I'd like to make a motion to table that, please.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion on that motion to table? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison? Yes. Dr. Lakuda? Yes. Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries, so we will
I'll
see
reach
you
out to
again.
them.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mary, for those questions. Okay, moving on to approval of the 2022-2023 revised budget. I believe I will turn that over to Mr. Wyland.
Yes, thank you.
Give us a little background and then move forward if you would, that'd be great.
You bet, you bet. So, I'm gonna jump in my time machine here a little bit. When we approved the original budget, that was in October of 2022, a few days actually before the referendum, which allowed us to increase spending by $5.4 million this year. So we always anticipated coming back. The original budget was built on not having that $5.4 million. It also obviously did not have other things that have happened during the year. So every year, typically, we would always come back to you and have a revised budget actually in July. And that might sound weird, I'll explain why, after the year is actually over. And it's simply because what we're trying to do is we get until July to revise our budget for the prior year, so that we don't get a footnote in our audit. Essentially, it's not a big deal or anything, but that's just been our practice that we continue to do that. Otherwise, if we exceed a functional area, and a functional area is just how you chop, one of the ways we can chop up the budget, but it's what's in the statute. Basically, it allows then we would get that finding in our audit. So we've always done this. We thought we would do it at this point in time. Now that we've got the salaries kind of worked out, we'll still probably bring it to you again in July for any minor changes that happen between now and then. But this is kind of where we are now. There are three main things, or actually more than three things, but I've kind of put them in the overview summary here. One is the $5.4 million increase to the budget, which is going to salaries and benefits, or to our 4K providers or our transportation contractors, all of which end up in salary and benefits for those folks. There's some minor increases in which add up to about $430,000 related to one-time funds for some technology rebates that we got related to E-rate, and some ESSER funds were actually, if you recall, we had a large allocation of ESSER funds. We had to anticipate how much we were going to spend this year. We now anticipate spending a little bit more of that allocation than we had anticipated before. And then the last one was we did get a mental health professional grant a few months ago after the referendum, so that we wanted to make sure that we included that within our budget for this year. And then the other thing that was not anticipated, well, we knew at the time, but we didn't know what the dollar amount was going to be, was that our flood at Prairie View that happened at the end of September, which actually went over the $1 million mark, is where we anticipated it being. It's pretty well nailed down right now. We kind of finished the last component of that loss at spring break, where we replaced, the week after spring break, actually, we replaced the furniture in the library that had soaked up a lot of water. So the last thing that we have that we're watching is there's some floor tiles that might pop up and that type of thing over the summer, and we'll watch those things, and the insurance company understands that we might have a few more things that come through, but nothing to the degree of this amount of money. So those are the main chunks of changes that we have within this agenda item that we had to put in here. There's a little bit more detail on how we're spending it. Again, that's in the additional detail area. So transportation, the employee group increases, co-curricular schedule, which we're still working on actually, but it's in this budget because it was in the referendum. A Grow Your Own program that we're looking to start this year. OPEB stands for, just as a reminder, other post-employment benefits. We have an OPEB fund to basically fund those benefits that are promised to our employees after they retire. It's health insurance, essentially. So we're just working our ways to getting that more funded than it has been. There is still a little bit of a liability. I'll be able to bring a new study to you in a year that will tell you exactly where we are. We have to do a study every other year, and last year the study showed about a $3 million liability yet. So we're slowly getting that close to being fully funded. And then there was a budget deficit before the referendum. That will be closed because of the referendum. And then we reallocated Governor Evers' monies to some maintenance projects related to, I think that was to the tennis courts, so that we'll finish the tennis courts. So wanted to mention that briefly. The tennis courts will be under construction next month. That was a planned project from a year ago, if you recall. We weren't able to complete that project or even start that project last year because we weren't able to get the last part of the project lined up with contractors because of supply chain and labor issues. So we delayed that project until this year. Now we're all lined up. We have a small window to get that project done because girls tennis starts in August. And so we wanted to make sure that we were done before that happened. Last year, the contractor said it would probably be September before that would gotten done, and we decided we'd delay it for another year. Other changes are mentioned in here. This Common School Fund is another thing that happens, and it just actually happened a little while ago. The DPI doesn't tell us how much money we have in this Common School Fund, which has to basically go for library books, things in the library, until typically the spring of the year. They just told us how much money that is, and then they tell us we have to spend all that money before the end of the fiscal year. So we have a very small window to do that. And that comes from a special fund within the state that they must take some time to have to figure out how much money is in there before they can tell each school how much they get. Mental health grants, the ESSER funding, and then interest rates for the tennis court project as well was in there. Trying to think if there's any other things. Otherwise, I can take some questions. We did. I'll just take questions.
All right, before we put a motion on the floor, we can ask clarifying questions to Andy. Does anyone have any clarifying questions? Heather, back to you.
Tim. I have two questions. One, thank you for sharing the update on Prairie View. Obviously, $1 million is a large amount, and grateful that insurance covered it. So I have a two-part question. One, can you share a little bit about, you mentioned library furniture, which that's great that it's new, but is there anything that was extra beneficial that we got out of the flood other than replacing things that maybe would take away from a capital budget going forward, or was it purely repair and refresh?
Yeah, I wished I could say we took care of some things, but
Wishful thinking.
we really didn't. It was pretty much repair and refresh.
Okay.
The library, I would say the library is significantly more refreshed than it was in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wished I could say it was a good thing, but it
Right.
was a huge logistical
Right. I
nightmare.
totally get that. I was just wondering if something, there were additional silver linings we could get out of that. And then
Yeah.
my follow-up is, it sounds like insurance covered the whole thing, or?
There were some small pieces that weren't included, and this gets kind of detailed, but basically the actual fix to what broke was not covered. So, and I don't know how much of this I've shared with you, but essentially there was where the water came into the building, the main pipe was a 4-inch pipe, and it turned underground and then came up. And back when the building was built in the 70s, it ended up being encased in concrete by a footing. And so 50 years, is that right? Yeah, 50 years of vibration on that concrete, which concrete is made out of stone and rock, wore through the end of the 90 at like 6 o'clock on September 28th in the morning. And that water, 4 inches of pipe, produces a significant amount of water. And basically the only place that it could go was up. and it actually raised a floor in a storage room where the water meter was, and then the water started coming into it. And we actually have footage of the water coming through this closet, and then our custodian bravely opening the door, and as the water gushed out. And then he saved a good portion of the building, we believe, by opening some doors from the gymnasium outside so that the water could go other places. But about 2/3 of the building had been, got flooded before we were able to kind of relieve that pressure and stop it from going everywhere else.
Okay, I have an additional question from
Sorry,
that. but-
I'm giving too much detail.
No, heads up. What a heads up thing by the custodian, though. That's great. So sounds like insurance covered most
of it.
that.
And there were two $10,000 deductibles that weren't
Right.
covered as well.
So my question is, and then I have one other from what you just said, is do we have any sense of what our insurance costs will go up, given that we had $1 million claim?
I don't. I would anticipate let me throw this out there. I probably would say in the 10 to the 15% range, something like that. I'm hearing that insurance companies have been having a lot of losses actually out there. So we've been having some significant increases in the past, and so I would anticipate something similar.
Okay, and then my follow-up question is more forward-thinking, and maybe it's already done, but was there a system in place to let us know that this happened? Or how was it human discovery? And if it is, what is the future looking like? Or maybe we have no more pipes that are like buried in concrete. I don't know. But
That would be really hard to tell. It shouldn't have happened in the first place, to be honest with you. Anybody, it was a ticking time bomb for 50 years, essentially.
got it.
We don't have any systems. We did talk about that quite a bit. You can put little devices that, when they get wet on the floor, will alarm, but you have to anticipate where to put those, and
Right.
you'd have to put them all over the place to deal with this type of situation. Other than, maybe around the water meter, you'd have a good shot at something like this happening. The story is actually. I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time. A dog walker actually saved us. They were walking by the building, and water was actually coming out of the gymnasium before the custodian opened the door. And they then went at 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, and alerted a teacher who was in her classroom that she had seen as she had walked her dog around the building. And then that person contacted the principal, and the principal contacted myself and the director of buildings and grounds. And then it just kind of went from there. So,
So we don't have.
We don't have a system in place to correctly find this issue because, it was a pipe underneath the ground.
Got it. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right, any other clarifying questions for Andy? Go ahead, Leslie.
So you mentioned the tennis courts and that they're getting fixed this year, or this
May.
spring, summer,
Yeah.
May.
Yep.
What I didn't hear, and maybe I just missed it, is along with the tennis courts, when we talked last year about it, we also talked about the solar on the pool.
Yeah.
Where is that one?
So that did get approved in the capital maintenance project last year. And so that is to start happening this May. So we already own the panels because that was a supply chain issue. So they're in a warehouse, and we are right now in the process of getting approval from Alliant Energy. So Full Spectrum Solar, who has done all of our other projects, is working with that and anticipates installing those starting sometime in May.
And so the labor for that with Full Spectrum, that's coming off of last year's then?
Yeah, last year, 22-23. So this year, this year, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. That was already baked into everything.
All right, any other additional questions of Andy? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the revisions to the 2022-2023 budget as of today.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. And I think I would be remiss by not thanking the community once again for the approval of our referendum. I think we are seeing on a daily basis right now with some of our neighboring districts who are making really, really painful decisions about staffing right now, and we have the luxury of talking about a budget that's relatively healthy. And so that is not lost on any of us, particularly Dr. Bergstrom and Andy and Gina, who have to make a lot of these decisions. So I think it's very important that we recognize, and our staff and our teachers also recognize what our community did for us this last November. So thank you. All right. Moving on to Policy 341, Early College Credit Program, and that comes directly from policy, so I'll turn that over to Heather.
Yep. Policy 341, the early college credit program, comes with a unanimous recommendation from policy, and I'll ask Ms. Jonan to walk us through that.
Thank you. So Policy Committee is looking for board approval of Policy 341 tonight. If you'll remember, we worked on the Policy 342 Start College Now program at a prior board meeting. So just to remind you of the difference, and the other policy is linked in this one, is the Start College Now program is for technical colleges, and there is a state statute that applies to that program. This policy, I titled it the 4-year college credit program, because that is also under state law for our 4-year colleges and universities. So they're two different programs, but the reason you'll see 341 in front of you tonight is that we wanted to revise it to mirror the Start College Now program to make it easier for our families to understand and navigate. Mr. Greg Granberg is the one who is the primary person to administer these policies, and he was present at the policy committee as well for that discussion. And so really, if you look at 341 and compare it to 342, we tried to keep the format somewhat the same and made sure the application process and those deadlines were similar so that families could decide which track they wanted to be on. So if you remember, when we passed 342, we talked about that students could participate in one program or the other, but not both at the same time, and that they can take a total of 18 credits combining the program, but they're capped at 18 total. So they could mix and match from each of the programs depending on the semester. And so we have all of that standard language in here as well. The main difference that you'll see in the policy is really a function of state law, because in the Start College Now program for the technical colleges, that is something the district pays for 100%. If you look at the 341 Early College Credit Program, the statute specifies when the district has to pay and when the family has to pay. And so that's why you will see that as a difference in this policy. And you'll also see in this policy that if a family is having a financial hardship, then they can petition to DPI for funding, or we can fund as well. Because I know that's one of our values, is we don't want financial impairments to limit the opportunity of our students. Otherwise, you'll see very similar language, again, trying to keep it simple for our families, and similar admin procedures. So for Dr. Bush's knowledge, we have board policies that the board approves, and then after those, we have our administrative procedures that are operational that the board doesn't approve, but we do bring them to your attention so that you are aware of them and our families are aware of them as well. So with
Okay.
that, I'll take questions.
I will kick it back to Heather, that's coming from policy, so are you making the motion to approve?
Yes.
Okay, so it's coming from policy, so it does not require a second. So I will open the floor for discussion or questions of Ms. Jonan. Go ahead, Anna.
I just wanted to, I guess, elaborate. Well, first of all, thank you for the explanation, because it does seem like these are very, very similar. And so I appreciate the distinction between the two policies, and one applying to technical colleges and the other a 4-year program. My question is related to the comparison of the two. And I guess I wanted to make sure I understood my recollection of 342, the technical college policy, is the standard similar that the district is willing to or pays for the class if there's not a comparable course that's offered in our school? Is that similar language between these two, or is there a difference there between these two?
So it's similar language, but in under state, so in the technical college program, that would be rare that we would have a comparable course.
Okay.
Our most popular are like our CNA class, our EMT classes. Whereas when we look at the 4-year colleges, that's where we could potentially have a comparable course, like if someone wants to take English 101, for example, and it's similar to our advanced English class. So we tend to run into
the fee issue in the Start College Now program. In the Early College Credit program. And so I would say in the technical college program, it's more about what are we going to do? What will be high school credit? What will be post-secondary credit? And
Okay.
looking at that. For this policy, it's more about, do we have a comparable course or not? And if we do, then we wouldn't pay for a student to go to college and take it because we want the student to take it here.
Okay.
So I would say that's where we have more of the discussion around. And under the early college credit program, the state law prescribes what we would pay.
Okay, so
Whereas this-
state law is determining this 75% and 25% breakdown.
Yes, and that's standard across the state of Wisconsin, and that's
Okay.
administered by DPI.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Troy, go ahead.
I just have one. The last part of the administrative guidelines talks about the credits. So a student would be granted 1/4 high school credit per one semester. Why? I guess what's the rationale behind that ratio?
That I would need help from Mr. Pliner. I know we talked about it at policy, and that is what we have traditionally been doing. So in terms of you want to know how the calculation is done, then I would ask Mr. Pliner to help with
Well,
that.
I guess my assumption is that most of these students are really not taking these courses to meet their credit. They probably already have their credits to graduate.
The ratio is 4.
Jim, do you want to make sure the microphone's on so the viewers at home can hear you?
So the ratio is 4 to 1. 120 college credits to graduate translates. We're 23 credits here. So it's, a college course that is worth 4 credits. If we were transcripting in the high school environment, would be the equivalent of 1 credit here.
Got it. Okay. I think I was reversing that. So college credits are a higher volume of credits. The ratio brings it back down to be more comparable to what a high school credit would be. Okay. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions from anyone? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison? Yes. Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Policy Committee. Okay, that concludes our action items for tonight. So we'll move on to E, discussion items, which is committee reports. Again, committees will be reassigned after this meeting, but we'll talk about what's happened to date. So back to Heather for policy.
Our last policy committee meeting was about this policy that we just approved. So when we don't have any future meetings because we're learning more about what we will be.
Okay, sounds good. Troy, vision steering.
We have not met since our last meeting. We've normally been meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, but we will not be meeting in May. So once we get our new committee set, I'll probably look for some dates that work for people, and probably later May, maybe even early June.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to F, information items. Vision and strategic planning, teaching and learning, and superintendent's report. So that is Dr. Bergstrom.
Well, thank you. And I will start with the visioning and strategic planning. And if you note, when we get down to the place where they talk about the goals in this framework and the board's goals, I want to show this slide yet again, because I think that when you listen to the teaching and learning report, when you listen to the superintendent's report, I believe you will see all of these priorities. You've already seen some of them reflected in the meeting already tonight, but I think you'll see the rest of them reflected in the report as we move forward. So I just invite you to maybe keep these in mind as we move through the next 15 minutes, and I think that you will see how these are alive in our school district every day. Now for the teaching and learning update, Mr. Tanner, would you like to come up?
Hello. Hello. So part of teaching and learning is the summer. So we have the summer semester program, which is happening again this year, July 6th through 28th. And registration opened last week on April 20th at 8 p.m. We pushed it back a couple hours this year to avoid conflicting with a family community event at Forest Edge. So 8 p.m. As typical, this always amazes people. We had 2,000 class registrations in the first minute. I keep an eye on the server and make sure that it's not that I could do anything about it anymore, but it's still nice to look at. And because we host that, and so that was a lot. That was quite a bit all at once. And then as of today, we have 5,184 signups. So that's classes that students are registered for. The sign up continues. It's open for a month, and so that keeps happening. And then one thing we did this year is we separated it out from swim lessons. So swimming lessons is actually being done separately. It has its own system through the pool, and it's different from summer school registration. And that's something new this year, which we had to communicate out to quite a few people. We have a new coordinator this year, Kristen Buskager, and she is amazing and doing a wonderful job of keeping everything organized, and it is outstanding. One question that I typically get, which Andy thankfully reminded me of today, is how does this compare to previous years? And so the next slide actually has some comparisons. And so the first bar is, I went back to 2019 because that was the last year. So basically, you've got here 2019, 2020. 2020 is the really low one because that was virtual only during COVID, not as much interest. Hard to do yo-yos and cup stacking and juggling and stuff like that when you're virtual. 2021, we sort of came back a little bit. So that year we had, 2,351 individual students registered for 5,667 classes. 2022, last year, we crept up a bit more to 6,500 total classes. So the last bar on the right is how many we have right now, which is 5,119. But granted, it's only been open for 4 days. And if you compare that, I went back to 2019. So the first two bars in the graph, the first one is basically 2019 on registration day, so that night. And the second bar is the total, when registration closed. So we are pretty on track with what 2019 looked like. So we had in 2019 5,410 classes registered. Right now we've got 5,119. So, I would say for now, it looks like we're back to our pre-COVID numbers for participation, both in terms of number of students and classes. I mean, we're slightly lower, but that also could be that we don't have the swim lessons in there. So that actually we could be actually higher than before. So that's just a historical comparison, because I know last year we kind of said, well, we're inching up, but we're not quite back to the pre-pandemic days. And so this year, we'll see. We've got it's open for another 3 weeks or so. But so far it's looking really good, and we've done some really interesting things this year with, we have our Say Yes classes, which are mostly to inspire the love of learning in, reading and math. And we also are keeping intervention classes for students over the summer. And that's real strategic in that we want to have students who continue through the school year. I mean, there's still, time left to grow during the school year, but then what we want to do is not lose that over the summer. And so we're doing a combination of having our existing intervention teachers continue to teach their same students over the summer and then into the fall. And in cases where we don't have teachers for that, internally, we're looking at some intervention curricula that's pretty easy for somebody to pick up and at least maintain some of the progress that students have made. So we're pretty excited about that. And it looks like people are too, because they registered for a whole lot of classes. What questions do you have?
Any questions for John about summer school? Let's go over here first. Anna.
Well, I have a question for John, but it might actually be a question for Andy. So I know that we've talked about the 3-year rolling average for our student enrollment numbers, and I guess I'm wondering if I guess the question would be, this is a good sign, right? So does this help us with that? situation, right? The
Yeah,
summer school factors into that.
Yeah, it absolutely does factor into it. It becomes one of it becomes a number that is incorporated with summer school in the 3-year average. So absolutely, I don't know that it's going to significantly impact us to the positive. We'll see where that ends up in the end of this. We do have, so it's actually done by the number of minutes of instruction. So what's kind of interesting this year is we only actually have depends on the year and where the 4th of July falls, but this year we only have 17 summer semester days. In the past, we've had a few more. Now, the good news is our expenses will be down too, because we won't have as many costs associated with the teaching staff teaching those days that they won't be there. So it should be proportional, but my guess is it might actually end up, the number of minutes might be a little bit lower than what it was last year, simply because of that fact. So it kind of offsets even if we do bump up a little bit more. So not a huge more technical answer than you probably were looking for, but.
Any other questions on it? I think Leslie, you had one?
So one of mine is just to thank you for making that adjustment for Forest Edge to make it at 8 o'clock. And then an opinion that if when you put out a survey about summer school things, that you would maybe put that on there as if that's a better time for people. I know it is for my family, but it may not necessarily be for others. So I think that that's wonderful. And also a big thank you about separating the swim lessons from there, because I know that many families feel that pain. So that's awesome that that's separated out. So, and then I had another question that I've now forgotten. So there you go.
We can come back. Heather. Questions are good.
Yep. I was just going to say thank you overall, because I am always so impressed with the summer school breadth and depth class offerings. It just, not to say versus a certain school district or anything like that, but I have a lot of friends that live in other school districts, and they're just always really shocked by the amount of amazing classes, not only from the Say Yeses, but all the way to puzzles and outdoor fun and other things that just really keep kids engaged. So a huge shout out to everybody who's involved with that. My only question was, this year I noticed that teacher names were not, normally it lists teacher names, and I was just curious if that's something we're trying out for a year, or if that's going forward, or what was the reason behind that?
I know in a lot of cases we don't know the teacher yet. So there are some that the teacher proposed that they're going to teach. And then a lot of them, we are kind of putting the class out there, even though a teacher didn't propose it. So, for example, we said we're going to have, some of the classes like the Say Yes classes, but we don't know exactly who's going to teach it. And part of that is we're waiting to see how many kids register for different sections and different classes. So there might be some that don't run, there might be others that do, and we might have to switch a teacher from one to the other. So we can look at that. Maybe in the future we would include the ones that we know, but we also don't necessarily want to put a name out there and have people be like, oh, great, I'm doing it for this, and then have that teacher move because of enrollment changes and things like that. So.
Yeah, I totally understand. I was actually just coming, I think historically, at least some of the classes had teachers' names with them. And I just know it was a total noticing. It's not an advocacy or a must do. It was just a noticing if something.
I do remember that also myself. I want to say too that, as you thank me for this, I'm really not the one who did any of the work here.
I was thinking.
So but I want to specifically say, like, Brad Ashmore, Jason Zerwick, and Katie Anderson are the three main people who are, associate principals, and they put a ton of work into this. I mean, so they work during the summer, but there's so much work that has to be done now during the school year on top of their regular jobs that, I just really want to thank them for that work, because that's huge. Having, to do that, coordinating it, working on job descriptions, making decisions about the scheduling, when you're going to offer what, and working with teachers and kind of recruiting that, figuring out when they're going to get trained. There's a whole lot of work there. And like I said, Kristen has been doing a great job learning on the fly and doing a whole lot of registration, organization and logistics that make it possible for us to do this. So I didn't do much. They did really all the work. So hopefully they're watching and can hear that you all are appreciative of all their efforts.
All right, any other questions? I just have one. John, you mentioned it, and I know some people watch at home, and we know from research and data and practice that it's really important that kids have these opportunities in the summer, just in terms of making sure that learning's occurring. But, I know you talk a lot about these Say Yes classes, and I would love for you to explain to people exactly what that is and what our philosophy is around that term and those classes.
Okay, yeah, so there was a time a while back when teachers would refer students to specific content areas, and it was always sort of like a deficit model. It was this is kind of a funny thing about summer school, because typically, at least when I was growing up, if you said you went to summer school, it was like, oh man, poor you, or what did you, and it was always this very negative thing. And summer school here is generally a really positive thing, as you can tell, wow, 2,000 people registered in the first minute. Yeah, people want to get in. So it's different here, but there were still some classes that we used to do and be like, well, you're registered for this one, or you're recommended. And so what we realized is that in addition to the academic support that we give to students who might be struggling or who are in intervention already, we should also offer ones that are just simply enjoying learning and just fostering that love of learning in a content area. And so several years ago, we decided to do those, and we came up, I don't even remember who came up with the idea. It wasn't me, but it's a great idea. It was just say yes to reading, say yes to math. And it was basically anybody from any skill level can do these. And it was just a time to explore things, not in hey, we're making up time or we're recovering a deficit, but just to enjoy it. And so it is structured. There's a teacher there to offer guidance and help with things, but it's just enjoyable. And I've seen a few of them actually that are really cool. Actually, several years ago, I saw it was a middle school social studies one, and it had students from I think it was grade 6, 7, and 8. And it was really cool because they got to pick a civilization that they were going to study, and they did just a bunch of in-depth hands-on work. And it was students from lots of different ability levels, some who are super passionate about social studies, and others who were just I don't know, my mom signed me up. But it was really cool because that excitement from some of the kids really infused the other ones. Well, you could tell looking at them. On day one, there were some who you could tell were really into oh, are we going to cover the Code of Hammurabi? And others were I need a map to find Canada. So, you could tell from
Caleb,
day one.
you're the new factor here. Sorry, go ahead.
But it was really cool to watch as that class progressed, how that enthusiasm happened. And then for math, last year, one of the Say Yes to Math ones was all about NASA and space exploration. And so it was very thematic. It was very cool. And so I sat in and watched some of those lessons. And it was taught by a teacher actually who is really passionate about that, but who doesn't normally teach math even. I mean, she can, she's, certified, but it was just a really cool thing. It was her passion project. And so that was really exciting. So I think those Say Yes classes are just a really great way to keep that enthusiasm and love of learning and kind of foster it no matter what your level is, instead of pegging people at a certain thing or having a deficit mindset. It's really just a much more exciting thing. So it's been a great addition to it. And so what we said, for this year especially is hey, if your kid needs a little extra help, sign them up for the intervention that they need, but also for the Say Yes, because that's just going to be the enjoyment and the way to apply the skills that they're learning, from, that meet their own individual, personalized needs to be capable in this particular content area. So we're really excited about the whole Say Yes program.
Thank you, and I'm sorry if some people get sick of my little kind of tell us a little more about that. But sometimes, I think we get used to things in this district, and it's time to stop and smell the flowers a little bit about things that our teachers and our staff do to make this district really special for our kids. And summer school is really one of those, and it's been that way for a long time. And not every district has what we have here, so thank you all for doing that. So it's important that we stop once in a while and just recognize what we do have here. So thanks, John. Appreciate it, and thanks to all the administrators that are actually running summer school. It's a big job. Thank you. All right, Dr. Bergstrom, back to you.
All kinds of great stuff here. And as I mentioned, if you look at our strategic priorities, you can see how summer school meets every one of them. It's really the kind of experience that we have come to expect, as President Flanagan said. So the first thing in the superintendent's report is National Library Week. So that is this week. And I had the pleasure at the Forest Edge Dinner and a Book Night of being in the room where students got to go pick up a free book. And it was very exciting because everybody in the family, including the adults, everybody got a free book. And so it was fun to tell people that. And I was there with one of the library paraprofessionals, Miss Sheffield. And just to watch her interact with the students and talk to each of them who came in about the kind of books that they liked. And she knew what they liked and she showed them things on the table. And just being there for a couple of hours made me want to go back and get my library specialist degree because that looked so fun for everybody involved, for our librarians, the paraprofessionals who assist in the library, and for the students. When you have that kind of person who's around you, getting to know you and connecting you with books that are about who you are and what you are interested in, there just isn't much that's better. So many thanks to all of them. The next thing is also about thanks, and that was the annual Bus Driver Appreciation Breakfast. That was really a lot of fun. We do it every year just to say thank you to the people who get our students here back and forth to school safely. And we also recognize some service milestones this day. Wayne Ace has been a driver/contractor for the Oregon School District now for 40 years. So you see Wayne standing next to Transportation and Safety Director Larry Mayo and myself. We also had Tracy Fleckinger, who's been a driver for 15 years, Clyde Gallagher for 15 years, and Jamie Hagstrom for 10. So this is very much a commitment that people make to get our kids back to school safely, and boy, do they know the students. When you get to sit down and eat breakfast together and talk about it, they know so much about our kids, and it just makes it a very special system. As does our school nutrition program, because look at what they did. They had Canadian foods as part of their Around the World lunch series. I did not know this was a Canadian thing. However, they had the poutine, the wedge cut French fries with gravy and mozzarella cheese. Did not know that was Canadian. Also the Canadian version of a hot dog, and somebody's gonna have to help me with this pronunciation. Stime? Did I say that right? It's the Canadian hot dog. And blueberries is the national fruit of Canada. So the kids got to do their Around the World lunch, this time honoring the food of Canada. So many thanks to our school nutrition team because they're making lunch and breakfast pretty fun. And then Brooklyn Elementary, look at them. They had a bird aviary. The first grade students made their own aviary at Brooklyn. So they enjoyed designing and creating their own birds to go along with their English language arts unit. And they celebrated it by showcasing them in the cafeteria for everybody to enjoy. They're beautiful. That would be a very fun thing to walk into and see. And our second graders at Netherwood, they had students go to the beach day. This is where Miss Esser's second grade students at Netherwood solved the mystery, why is there sand at the beach? They learned how rivers can be powerful enough to carry rocks and slam them into each other, breaking them into smaller and smaller pieces along the way. So it looks like they had a little bit of fun learning a lot of science. And then Brooklyn also had their Opera for the Young. So this was a group that was brought in to perform, and they also allowed our students the opportunity to perform alongside them. It was the opera featured 22 of our fourth grade students who performed Barber of Seville, an adaptation of the Rossini opera. And the performance was pretty phenomenal and captured the attention of the rest of the school. So the whole school attended this fun production. So we're so proud to offer this to our students. Thanks to the Brooklyn PTO for sponsoring the event, and certainly to Ms. Rutz for organizing the opportunity. And Ms. Rutz is the general music educator at Brooklyn. And then, as was mentioned earlier, Forest Edge had dinner and a book. And that's when they had families and students come in, and they had variety of volunteers that had a different career, representing careers and organizations, and they read books and talked with the students and the families. Attendees walked through the building, room to room, to meet a postal worker, athletes from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, an NFL referee, a therapy dog, a Fitchburg librarian, a police officer, and many more. As a matter of fact, I think Oregon High School athletes were a very popular draw in the dinner and the book night. So that was really a well-attended event. When I left at probably 6:45, there had been over 600 attendees thus far that evening. There we go. And there was also a really fun event at Prairie View. It was either last week or the week before, but it was family game night. So many different teachers were sponsoring really fun, simple board games. Some were a little crazy and elaborate, and some were really the old favorites, like you see Trouble and Candyland on the table, giant decks of Uno cards. And so families were able to come in and select what games they thought would be fun to play together, interact with the Prairie View adult in the room, and it was just a really low-key way for families to spend high-quality time together. Oh, I forgot. They also had Jenga, Connect 4, Pictionary. I mean, there were some pretty fun opportunities. Very competitive families, too. And then Netherwood students, they planted trees for Earth Day. The second grade students at Netherwood planted these trees in honor of Earth Day. It was a collaborative event with the high school students. So thanks to our educators and the high school student helpers for making this a really fun day, a success for everybody involved. And speaking of success, congratulations to our 5th and 8th grade students who participated in the regional math competition. Our students, as usual, performed very well. In addition, one of our 5th and 6th grade teams received a top score and will participate in the Math Mega Meet next month. This was also a really nice piece. Oregon High School sophomores recently put their learning about the power of positivity. They learned about this in health class, and they put it into practice by taking time to place some positive messages on the lockers of 8th graders. So many thanks to our high school health teacher, Juanita Weinert, and our social emotional learning coach, Janet Pliner, for supporting this whole effort. And then congratulations to Oregon Middle School students Brady Bartlett, who's been selected as the recipient of the 2023 Excellence in Language Study Award, given by the Wisconsin Association of Language Teachers. What an awesome thing to earn in middle school. This annual award is conferred on Wisconsin students who have demonstrated great achievement and process in, and who exhibit great potential for further achievement in the language they study. Students must show evidence of interest in the language both within and beyond the classroom. So congratulations, Brady. And then the 7th grade band recently did a Google Meet with Daryl Johnson II. He is the composer of Aluminum Sharks, which they are learning as a piece in band class right now. Students have done a lot of work analyzing the piece and coming up with questions to ask him. Some questions included, how did you come up with the title since aluminum and sharks are so very different? And what inspired you to become a composer? So students learned about his composition process, as well as what the piece would sound like had he chosen different notes, not within the chord. And now we have our Oregon Middle School 7th grade students preparing for the annual Urban Challenge. This is where students work within their group to earn points through completing a number of tasks. Each group must work together to plan how they will navigate their day, including mapping their bus route, eating lunch, and completing tasks within the allotted time period. This is a great practice of problem solving, team building, and resilience. And I have chaperoned one of these teams on a couple of different occasions, and that is so true. They have to learn how to work together, how to ensure that they all have a voice, because they all know a little bit of something about something different. And so when they're working together as a team, that's when they really accumulate these points. And it is such a fun day, such a fun day. Last year, I still remember my group, and it was so hot, we had to stop for water breaks constantly. It was one of those 90-some degree days in May, and the kids were worn out. But boy, were they impressive. So thanks to our OMS 7.0 team for designing this really amazing learning experience. And then we had Vietnam veterans visit Oregon High School Social Studies class. So the Social Studies department, they were excited, honored, and grateful to host 4 Vietnam War veterans to meet with the freshman class as part of their study on the Vietnam War. Veterans Chuck Hoffman, Fred Enfield, Dennis Fisher, and Keith Padel discussed their experiences with the draft and service time in Vietnam. Students were able to ask questions and make connections to their own learning. What an incredible experience for the students in that room. And then we also had our annual art show. The OHS Art Department hosted the 21st Annual Art Show and Silent Auction as part of Fine Arts Week on April 13th. The art show has been an annual event since 1999 and serves as a showcase of student work and featured some very beautiful pieces. There was one of our student artists did of her grandmother that just was really touching. So you really get to learn a lot about our students and what they think is interesting and beautiful when you have an opportunity to go through the art show. And then finally, not even finally, you guys, we still have a couple more. 16 students from the high school German classes recently participated in the 31st annual German Day competitions at UW-Madison. The event hosted schools from around the state, and they took part in events like charades, music, posters, skits, memes, Pictionary, poetry, and spelling. They not only were able to showcase their German skills, but they were able to experience a college campus and have a lot of fun with their teammates and build some camaraderie. And then our Spanish students were a part of celebrating Fine Arts Week. So here you see them in Miss Krenz's Spanish class. They explored and created artwork to celebrate Fine Arts Week. So they had art projects such as colorful ox carts from Costa Rica, papel picado from Mexico, and worry dolls from Guatemala. So we love your creativity. That's really cool. And the high school they had some alumni who came to share their experiences as part of Fine Arts Week, which I think is a really awesome practice. So Jotika Dietrich, she was the class of 2018. She spoke to photography students about her adventures at MATC and their commercial photography program. She'll graduate this May. Congratulations to her. And Kyle Stevens, who was part of the class of 2004. He spoke to art classes and game design classes about his animation and design classes at MATC or Madison College, and how he is now a program manager at Raven Studios in Madison. So what a cool addition to Fine Arts Week. We also want to say congratulations to Aubrey Kaya and Betsabe Ramos, who were recently announced as finalists for the Madison College Pitch Contest. The Pitch is a business planning competition in which area high school students create and submit a video to explain their business idea. Aubrey and Betsabe will advance to the final round, where they will present their ideas to live judges. So congratulations to each of them. That's quite an endeavor. And many congratulations to Dasha Vorontsov, who is our WIAA Scholar Athlete. That's pretty incredible because she is one of only 32 students statewide. So that's pretty terrific. And, let me make sure I got that right. Right, 32, yeah, okay, just making sure I got it right. So there were only four females and 4 males from the division, from our division, who were selected. So that's, way to go, Dasha. And then we also, and this is another really great thing, we received the 2023 Green Ribbon School Award from the U.S. Department of Education. And if you've been around for a while, you know that Brooklyn Elementary has also won this award, as the Oregon Middle School. So it's pretty incredible that 3 of our schools have now received national level awards for their work related to sustainability. So many thanks to Forest Edge and their students and staff, because I know a lot of work was put into ensuring that they met the criteria and applying for the award. And now we will be sending representatives to Washington, D.C. to accept it. We also have, for the 5th year in a row, everybody, we've won the National Award for Best Communities for Music Education. And that is no accident, right? We're continually meeting the criteria for this national level award because of the really outstanding learning experiences that our staff put together for our students, our really talented students, and then the amazing support from families. Families really take a lot of pride in the type of musical experiences that their students are able to engage in. And it's pretty special that this is the 5th year in a row for that particular award. And then a reminder to tune into the podcast this week. It's really fun. It was the construction house. So we took a visit out to the construction house, and we were able to interview some students who really spoke about some very interesting things as far as their takeaways from this. Very much about the skills, but much more so about the problem solving and the collaboration that are a part of this process. And that was them. That was not me planting ideas. They said that. It was pretty fantastic. So tune in, because they have a lot of really interesting things to say, and they do a beautiful job. Beautiful job. And I believe that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, that closes out F, information items. Moving on to G, closing. A future agenda. Our next meeting is May 8th. If you can believe it, we are closing in on the school year fast. So we will convene again on May 8th. And then we'll move to checkup. But before we do that, we want to formally, as the board, welcome Caleb to the table. We're happy you're here. So you survived your first meeting. Way to go. All right, we'll go around the room for checkout. Mary, anything? I have nothing. Heather? Troy? Nothing. Leslie? Caleb? Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do actually have 2 things. First of all, I want to just say thank you to Dr. Bergstrom, because I always really appreciate your superintendent's report. It's really a highlight, and that's lovely. And then I wanted to point out 2 upcoming dates, or a group of dates, I guess, just so everyone is aware. May 1st is Principal's Day, Appreciation Day, so make sure you go out and thank your principal. And then May 8th through the 12th is Teacher Appreciation Week. So I'm sure your PTOs, if you're in elementary school, are planning things. And if you're not in elementary school, just make sure you go out there and thank your teachers, because they definitely deserve it and do the best they can for you.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Caleb?
I'll just say that I'm really happy to be here, and it was a great first meeting.
All right. Thank you. Anna?
I just want to piggyback a little bit on Library Week, because I just, my daughter Mackenzie used to love to read, took a gap in loving to read, and now is back to loving to read. And she's talked about, she brings these books home, and she's like, honestly, I just can't wait to finish this one, because I know the librarian has another one just waiting for me, and she knows exactly what next book. And so she's going to the library just excited to get the next book. And we happen to live close to where the new village library is being constructed. And the other day we were on a walk, and Kenzie said, I cannot wait for that library. I can just walk right over there to get my next new book. So I just thought I would piggyback on the excitement of our librarians knowing our kids and what they're excited to read, and it's really inspired her to be excited about reading. So I just wanted to share that story.
Super cool. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we will not have a closed session this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll make that motion. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:58. Thanks, everybody.